And we're checking back down the line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Check, check, check. Check 1, 2, 3. Back down the line.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Check 1. All right, let's do a podcast. How's that sound? He is. I think he fits so well. He is. It might be it might. He's pulling up all the box scores. All right, let's do this. All right, guys. Here we go. All right, everybody. Happy New Year. Hello and welcome to Got Your Ears On. I'm Guido along with Scoot and Johnson. Man, we have a lot to talk about, Johnson, from a football bowl win, which we'll talk about later on in the show, to what might be the craziest week we've had in a while for West Virginia basketball, both, with news and things happening and like sort of just general emotionally for us as fans. But to talk about basketball with us this week, we're so excited to have Brent Solheim back with us. Brent, thanks for coming back. We haven't scared you off yet. That's what's good. You haven't been like, I don't want to talk to these fools. So I guess where we should probably start, guys, is Oscar has left the program allegedly for Miami. He's heading down to South Beach. Johnson, what's sort of your initial take on Oshwebe leaving the program?
I'm trying to remember to give him proper credit. I don't remember who tweeted it out, but then we had Hugs on a Zoom call and someone said, when or will Oscar be joining the team? And you were reading, no, absolutely not. So to me, that was such a fast moving, like trying to process. Number one, he's not with the team. Number two, he's never coming back to the team. You felt like there had to be something else behind the scenes. And then to your point about Miami, then we started to hear some of that stuff. So today he's officially in the transfer portal. That seems like a formality now. But yeah, so that's kind of I felt like just as we were getting, and just as WVU Twitter was getting their head around it, it was sort of like, and there's more to the story.
And Brent, like from your perspective, this comes. What I thought was sort of kind of weird about it, and I get it. It was Northeastern, but this comes after probably his first decent game of the year. A day, two after that, and then he's gone. But I think we all kind of felt leading up to this that something was wrong with Oscar all season.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't disagree with you. He came out and had such a impactful freshman year. He's on all of these watch lists for all of these awards for this year. Obviously, didn't come out. We're having a successful 10 games, first part of the season. And he's not putting up the numbers that I think a lot of people were expecting. So, yeah, I don't want to speculate too much here, but I think that's kind of why you guys have me on the show, is to, talk about it from a basketball, team player's perspective. So, I don't know if he had someone in his ear after 10 games where, hey, Oscar, it's not your fault. It's the coach's fault. Go ahead.
How prevalent is that in college basketball, where you've got your coaching staff, but some guys, I'm sure, depending on how highly touted they were in high school and maybe even what some of the AAU programs that they might have been associated with, how prevalent is it that some of these kids have quote unquote handlers or people kind of not agents, but almost like pre-agents trying to guide them, probably with the idea that down the road that these people will benefit from these kids later on.
Okay, so I saw a little bit of that, 25 years ago, but one thing that's significantly different about now is I didn't have a cell phone back then. We didn't have social media. So for someone to reach out to me, they would have had to call my dorm room or call my room at my apartment. Now every kid has a phone and he's accessible to everyone from back home at any time. After every game, they can read the comments about them, if they're playing great or playing poorly. You'll see all kinds of, if they have a great game, there'll be people putting the GOAT emoji, like they're the greatest thing that's ever happened. But if they don't have a good game or if they don't have several good games, people will get on and just post, maybe from anonymous pages. Hey, your game is garbage. Your game's trash. You're not an NBA player, And I follow some of these guys on Instagram and Facebook and all that. And there's some very positive comments, but there are some people that are just unbelievably nasty. And I can understand how that could get into a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid's head. I mean, when I played, I had one instance where someone left a voicemail in my dorm room that said, you guys are going to get, your ass is kicked by UMass. And I apologize for the language. I know this is a family show, but I laughed it off. But for someone to go to their social media page and see your garbage on every post, I think that may build up over time and start getting to them. And then they might reach out to back home or someone else. And, and that's where I'm saying, and this is total speculation, but hey, Oscar, it's not your fault that you're not producing. It's X, Y, or Z's fault. And if you leave, you're going to be back on the Moses Malone watch list or whatever the big man player of the year is. So one thing that I want to point out, and I don't know Oscar, I've never talked to the guy, but I've followed, Oscar since he announced he was going to play for West Virginia. And I also followed a kid from my high school named Matthew Hurt. Okay, now he's a Duke recruit. He's a sophomore. They both played in the McDonald's All-American game together. Now, if you looked at Matthew's year last year, he did not have a great year. In the offseason, he put on 20 pounds of weight, lifting weights, working out incredibly hard because last year, I think in his eyes was a disappointment. He comes out this year, and as of like a week ago, he was leading the ACC in scoring at 18.8 points per game. I mean, he is Duke's best player. Now, if you look at Oscar, who had a very successful freshman year, he has admitted that his last summer wasn't as productive as it could have been. So what I'm wondering is, did he take it easy this summer? And so he didn't put in the work that some of the other players did, and now we're seeing the results of that on the basketball court? I don't know. I don't know what that answer is, but I do know that Oscar has said he did not work hard like he should have this summer. And I think, what we're seeing on the court may be a result of that.
Well, and I think Huggins, we heard Huggins kind of allude to that in some of his post-game and pressers and all of that kind of stuff. But Scoot, for you, I can remember last fall of 2019, when we first started doing the show and we were talking about how excited we were to have this McDonald's All-American in the program playing for us. And then now we've lost this McDonald's All-American. Like, is that a big deal to you, that losing a guy who is, that highly recruited and touted?
Well, I think locally and for the team, it's a big deal regardless, but I feel like it's probably more of a big deal nationally because West Virginia is not known to get McDonald's All-Americans. So the fact that we had one and now he's gone, I don't know that it's going to be perceived nationally as Oscar was struggling. It might be perceived that Huggs pushed him away because Huggs is too gritty of a coach or something like that, which I don't know that any of us feel is the narrative that really needs to be told. I don't know. For me personally, I think my interpretation is I would venture to guess that Oscar in high school was very successful and dominated almost every time he stepped on the floor. So because he was such a good player as far as ability wise, some of the finer points of basketball instruction, coaches don't want to mess with a good thing while they've got it. So I don't know how well he was coached, and I would venture to guess that Huggins and Eric Martin and Larry Harrison and Ron Everhart have really started to hammer some of the finer points of playing basketball, especially when you're playing with another big, which I guarantee you Oscar didn't have to do in high school. So now Oscar's doing a lot of processing, and I think I saw that he was, thinking before he actually did stuff instead of using muscle memory. I feel like there was a lot of processing happening, which led to a delay in getting a shot off, or, second guessing what he's doing, and he doesn't make the basket, or he gets the ball stolen, or doesn't get the rebound because he's too busy worried about where is he supposed to be. And I don't know, Brent, do you think that's anything? I don't know.
Oscar's a world-class athlete. He can run and jump with almost anyone in the world. I was talking to someone in the program, and they were telling me about how fast Oscar ran down the court last year, because they have these trackers now on them that they wear for practice and games, and how fast he ran on the court. There was one play, I think it was one of the more memorable plays from last year. He ran down a loose ball where other people let it go because they thought it was going out of bounds. He ran it down, got it, and then dunked it. And I can't remember how fast it was, but it was eye-opening how incredibly athletic and fast he is. So one thing that goes along with that, and it looks like Oscar didn't play from a really young age. That's another thing that I can look at him and know, like, okay, here's a great athlete, world-class athlete, has a knack for getting to the ball, almost like a Dennis Rodman. But he doesn't have probably the number of hours of drills that a lot of the other players do. So Scott, I know what you're talking about as far as he gets the ball and he's trying to think instead of just, leaning back and feeling a guy and being able to, roll one way or the other off of him. He pulls the ball up to his chin. He thinks about what he's doing before he does it.
We're seeing it now with Derek Culver, where it's now becoming second instinct. Derek Culver's already spun by the time, Oscar would still be thinking, which way should I spin?
Yep. No, I agree with you. I think he's thinking too much, and then, it's possible. And like I said, this is all speculation, but you have a couple bad games, then you start overthinking it more than you were even before. So,
do you think his mind was made up before that Northeastern game? You think he knew that he was leaving before he played that
probably. I'm thinking he probably had people in his ear before then. And one thing about this transfer, though, that's funny is if he had a lot of distractions in Morgantown, what does he think's going to happen in Miami? You want to talk about distractions central. Now, we went down there when we played Miami when we were in the Big East, and we had an extra day. And I remember getting up one morning, and we had several hours before, we had lunch or practice or shoot around, whatever we had that day. So all of us white guys went to the beach. All of my black teammates, they all stayed in the hotel room and slept in, and all of us white guys went to the beach. Well, unfortunately, I was the only white guy that played significant minutes, and I got fried at the beach. So I'm out there playing like a lobster. But I'm just saying, in Miami, there are so many other things you can do other than basketball. If him thinking, hey, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone and focus on getting better and an NBA career, I don't know if that's the best decision for him.
Well, and that other scoot, just to go back, because Brent, you're exactly right. And I think the other thing too, before we just go past that, the other thing that Scoot said about the whole narrative around him transferring and maybe being run off, that sure came out on I'm usually on Twitter. I usually avoid Facebook, but wow, did you see that on Twitter too? A lot of people going at the coaching staff saying, here's yet another transfer where we had talent, they came in, now they're not here anymore. And they, now that died down as the Miami stuff, got discussion, kind of came to light and became a discussion point, but that certainly was a separate theme. So that's raw for a lot of people. And that is a bit of a, ongoing theme that we've had over the years. So that certainly came up.
Well, and
now there's a lot of push. I was going to say there's a lot of push with the Adidas stuff. You're seeing that on Twitter, that Miami's an Adidas school, and as we know, these Adidas schools somehow
That's right.
are, cash is going to different people, and
I mean, that's why
so
Scooty's
I
wearing
wonder
an
if
Adidas shirt right now. I mean,
that's right.
he's getting
Hey,
paid to wear it.
I'm for sale.
I
Just
just
letting
think,
you know.
it
All day I dream about sports.
it's kind of funny because, and we'll talk about the games here in a second, but it's kind of funny. I think that, for that Oklahoma game, we were everybody was on their heels about it, and that's all they talked about on the broadcast. And then I think that you saw in the Oklahoma State game, okay, this team can play without him. He's, those rebounds will be made by somebody else. So I think to me, that's interesting that, I think that I agree with you, Johnson. Like, people are always like, oh, here's another top recruit that's getting, pushed away from the program. But I also think that the program is successful when the right recruits are in the right position on the team.
Yeah, sure. And I think Brent too, I wanted to see what you thought because going into OU, I think it was complicated not only by, hey, less than 48 hours ago, you had this major change to your team and lineup. Now you're retooling the lineup. But, oh, by the way, the other thing coming out of the Northeastern game heading into this road weekend was Isaiah Cottrell goes down with a torn Achilles, which to me just kind of takes the wind out of you because we were all excited about him. I think he was gaining confidence. And then not that it's good against anyone, but in this Northeastern game, that's like a replacement, that's just going to be a blip on the overall radar. You have such a terrible injury outcome. So, I think now not only is it Oscar, and maybe a lot of people speculated maybe Isaiah starts to get some of those minutes, but now he's not even around, and it goes back to your one, now DC's your one big carrying the load.
Yeah, that's it's certainly both of those happening, Oscar leaving and the Achilles injury. Now we have Gabe and we have Derek Culver. And Gabe, as much as I love him defensively, he's not Oscar. He can still come out and give you good minutes and do some good things, but he's not going to give you a double-double, every other night on the court. So, having those two now no longer playing the rest of the season hurts tremendously. But hey, I will say this though, after these last two games, I don't want to say pleasantly surprised. I love how they didn't give up. They could have rolled over both games. And you saw a very, everyone's trying to adjust to life without Culver in the first half of the OU game. But second half of that game, second half of the Oklahoma State game, there was a certain grit that we displayed. And that is really, really promising to me to see. And I like the team going forward after seeing that.
Yeah, and Scoot, you and I have been talking, and I know people are going to roll their eyes. I thought this before, we're still on the high of this Oklahoma State second half, right? But even before that, even going into Oklahoma State, I know this sounds silly, but I almost liked the team better. I thought
first 15 minutes of first 15 minutes of the second half of the Oklahoma game, I felt we played the best team basketball offensively and defensively than we've seen the whole season. We had a lot of guys moving on offense. They seemed to be pretty determined.
But don't you think spacing, moving the ball,
sure,
getting people that extra pat, like I know that first half against Oklahoma was rough, but then even then, and I think Jalen Bridges' emergence these last two games has been amazing. And I just almost like us immediately. I know that's silly to say, that's not a knock, like I didn't like Oscar or something, but I think as a team, I already feel like I like us way better now the way we're playing.
Well, you move to that kind of four guard, rotation that we have now, and you don't try to be the big team in the paint, and I have to tell you, it felt a little bit more in some ways, especially in the second half of the Oklahoma State game, like beeline ball. Like you saw the ball get moved around outside the arc a lot. You saw Deuce become an amazing leader on the team, and he's so clutch, and we've seen it now multiple times with him, but you saw him, in the Oklahoma State game hitting those threes. I kind of like that and like Scoot, you would be the one that'd say this. It's more exciting basketball. Like, and Brent, I'm sorry, Brent was a big man. I'm sorry that like Scoot, that post up, that post up inside rebound, layup, tip. Like, that's not exciting basketball. Scoot wants to see the ball move around in big threes.
Hey, the inside buckets are only 2 points. You can get 50% right. more shooting behind the arc.
But Brent, I thought, so back to your comment about people coming out of the woodwork on social media, I saw some of our finest on Twitter after the Oklahoma game saying and tweeting at Jalen Britt, which is my pet peeve, right? Like, don't tweet at these guys. But we had people tweeting at Jalen Bridges saying, well, Jalen Bridges isn't the answer. And it infuriated me because, number one, I was sitting there watching the Oklahoma game in the first half thinking, if you're Jalen Bridges, so this McDonald's All-American has left, and they look down the bench to Jalen Bridges and they go, oh, hey, guess what? You're up. You're filling the void, first of all, from on paper, from a lineup standpoint. Then all he does is come out and is the only reason we have a pulse through the first half of the OU game. I think he finishes the Oklahoma game with like 19 points. I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember the box score. He shot excellent. He contributed to one of the best shooting nights, even though we lost, one of the best shooting nights that we had. And then he comes back in the Oklahoma State game. Too bad he got saddled with a third foul kind of early, but he comes back with another great game against a really talented Oklahoma State game. So to me, if your answer from Oscar leaving is to then turn to Jalen Bridges after these last two games, even after Oklahoma, and say, well, he's not the answer, then you're just determined to be grumpy and unhappy, and you're not giving the guy a fair shake. He's playing lights out, and I think he's going to be great now for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm excited about Jalen Bridges. He's shown that he can shoot the outside shot, and I'm sure he's got some interior moves as well that we'll see, but Scott, I'm right there with you on that. It's incredibly frustrating and disheartening to see how people can be when they can hide behind a keyboard. And as much as I hate the term the new norm, this is the new norm, when you talk about 2020, that I think that social media and kids at a young age having to get some thick skin and just having to deal with that is going to be how they're all living going forward. They have to accept that there's those kind of people out there that are just going to put you down no matter what. And I hope from a young age they get some good coaching and good parenting where, hey, just, don't worry about that. That guy, it's not a reflection on you. It's a reflection on the person making the comment. But I do think that we're going to see that going forward where, 50% of the comments are poor, 50% of the comments are you're the GOAT. You're either the GOAT or you're the worst guy to ever play for West Virginia.
You're either the GOAT or the poop emoji.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, you're right. There's very little in between.
Yep.
Now, Brent, I've got a question. This is the analysis that our listeners want to hear from you. Okay. Oklahoma has several players on their team who have made some very poor decisions with their haircuts. Thinking back to your time playing,
and Scoot, may I just really quick?
Sure, go right ahead.
And that hair accentuates what I would submit are very punchable faces.
So, wow. Thinking back to your time, is there a team that you remember playing where you thought, man, these guys, not only are they a pain, but they look really stupid?
No, I think in the mid-'90s, you're 15 years away from the 70s where we had that type of long hair. I can't remember anyone, maybe a Jake Voskel, maybe from UConn, that had the headband and a little bit longer hair, but there wasn't too much craziness. There wasn't the tattoos you see now. There wasn't all the different hairstyles you see now. It was way more clean cut back then.
Was it maybe shorts and things were a little on the, I think of like God Sham God and players where they had super baggy shorts and things. I'm trying to think of guys that might have looked ridiculous back in the day where I would have been like, what is this clown doing? Like, because I look at Brady Manick and I think, what are you doing? Like, what is going on with this look? You're not Larry Bird. I know you look like
He looks
Larry
like
Bird, but you're not him. And I'd like to hit you. So, like, what is going on?
No, when I played, we're talking 94 to 98. It was a couple years. The people who really brought the baggy pants on were the Fab Five. They were the first ones that were ginormous shorts. And of course, being a ninth grader, 10th grader, when the Fab Five were on the scene, we all wanted baggy pants. So that was one thing you saw when I was playing. Even the Carl Kanai baggy jeans that I remember people saying I had a pair, and you could sneak two midgets into the club, one holding onto each leg. And but there wasn't any crazy hairstyles. It was extraordinarily baggy pants.
When we played basketball, we had those booty huggers that, like, I was constantly trying to pull down a little bit farther down without letting the waist go below my rear end. I was trying to find a way. Can I stretch that inseam somehow? How can I make that happen?
Oh, man. This is what happens when we let Scoot ask the questions. It goes straight to hair.
Well, this is what people want to know.
I don't think the people want to know this. I really don't. I think you want to know. So, not to throw away the Northeastern game, West Virginia did get a win there against a fill-in team that apparently our connection to them was Ron Everhart used to coach there. So maybe he knew somebody and made a phone call. I think for me, the fun part of that game, Scoot, was Laney Fateri doing the play-by-play for ESPN and ESPN Plus or whatever it was on. I felt like I was going to hear an Andy Van Slyke goes deep comment at some point.
Well, he must have thought that there was a doubt about it because he didn't say there's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
so
right.
That was a Laney.
But I think that, again, we had said this already. Oscar had a good game there with, 15 rebounds and 12 points. But moving on from there, we go to Oklahoma. We take our weekend away to the lovely Cornhusker State, and we play Cornhuskers, Nebraska, right? Oklahoma is the Sooner State. Do they
Prairie something with a prairie?
State?
You somehow
made it.
You somehow made it more boring by bringing Nebraska in.
So we spent our weekend away.
Prairie dogs.
Lovely weekend in Oklahoma. We play.
We all know we went to historic. What did we call that, Scoot? Conestoga Wagon Wheel Pavilion.
The Wagon Wheel Pavilion.
Wagon Wheel Pavilion.
So obviously a rough first half, a strong second half. So we first see this where we were down by 19 at the half, 18 at the half. And,
18, yeah, I think.
Yeah, and we come back to tie it up, but eventually lose to Oklahoma 75.
I think the one thing here to make sure we point out is we witnessed one of the most chicken bleep double technical fouls I think I have ever witnessed in a game, where I'm just going to call him Keanu Reeves because I can't remember his first name.
Austin.
Just runs across the floor. So I think maybe the 1B punchable face to Brady Manick's 1A punchable face, if I had to rank them. He just runs across the floor like a stray toddler that got away from the sideline, and he just runs into Dennis Culver on purpose. And then what do the refs do? They call a double technical on he and Culver. Culver goes to the side like, what? Hugs just about tears the stool in half, because he's livid. That, to me, two things, and then I'll shut up, Guido. But we knew how this game was going to go when that happened on the heels of Emoja Gibson transfer from noted basketball power North Texas, banks in a 3 on his way to an 8 3-pointer, 28-point performance. I texted Scoot and I said, I've read this book before. I know where this game's going. It doesn't matter what we do. This is going to be a loss.
Well, and I think you're right. So first of all, that was very grumpy old man of you. Second of all, it was another one of those games. I felt like it was, in the first half at least, it was another one of those games like Kansas where even if we were doing stuff right, we still couldn't get it put together. If this time I felt like it was more referees and officiating, not to place blame, but I will say though that in the second half you saw this team come to life, And Brent, like from your end, like what changes in the locker room at halftime to make that kind of difference to come out and, when you're down by 18 and to come out with that kind of attitude in the second half?
I would say Coach Hugs probably lit him up. that would be my guess. No, but I think on top of the coach getting on everyone, there's some adjustments that are made at the half as well. You might look at, I know coaches look at the stat sheets, who's hot, who's not. Of course, they know that during the game, but the coaches are going to also have a little powwow without the players, and hey, we need to do this or that, or let's try something different. And so I think a little bit of getting on them combined with some changes, coaching plan, mix it up a little bit is what the difference would be.
Now, let me ask you this, Brent. I noticed. So Emoji Gibson scores career high, probably like he'll never come close to that career high again. And he hit 8 3-pointers. And I've noticed throughout the season, it seems to be one of the trends we seem to be struggling with is defending the perimeter. And it to me, it always seems like we're 2 passes behind, or we're not rotating. So is it the rotations, or is it guys losing track of their assignments? What do you think is causing a lot of these open threes?
So when we had 2 big guys like Culver and Oscar in the game at the same time, if they have a 4 that can shoot, or if they do some screen and rolls, and all of a sudden one of our big guys is guarding a guard, and they swing the ball around, we can't recover. That might be part of it. So I know we had a little bit smaller lineup against Oklahoma, but all of those guys playing together, maybe for the first time, that type of lineup. So I think we'll see an improvement on our outside defense going forward with the smaller lineup.
And I think we saw that in the Oklahoma State game. It did seem to tighten up a little bit around the perimeter. But I think that's probably been one of the Achilles heels for us this season so far, is that guys are getting open on the perimeter and they're hitting shots that I mean, I'm not the greatest shooter, but I might have a chance at hitting if I'm wide open. I mean, I can stroke it from outside. So I don't know if like you said, I'm hoping that that's a trend that we can kind of correct with some quicker defense. I'll tell you, I mean, and I think Guido will probably talk about him here in a second, but the emergence of Kedrian Johnson in the Oklahoma State game, who coming into the season is noted for his defense, because I think he was the National JUCO Defensive Player of the Year last year. So, I mean, he's a defensive guy. I'm hoping that maybe that tightens up some of that perimeter defense as well, seeing some more minutes out of him.
I'll give you my quick take on it, Scoot, with the Kedrian Johnson thing, and you're not going to like it, which Kedrian Johnson in that Oklahoma State game just played Jordan McCabe another 2 positions down on the bench. Like
100%.
I 100% agree.
He just, I mean, like Jordan better pick up the phone and start dialing his transfer portal, because
I think the minutes have to come from someplace, and that's where the minutes come from.
Well, and it's that role, and having Kedrian out there really opened up, and we've been talking about this the past couple shows, opened up Deuce to kind of play more of a 2 guard here and there, and work his way open in shots, and then the defensive side of it. I mean, I feel bad for Jordan McCabe, but it's not a good outcome for him if Johnson can keep playing games like that.
I think Johnson needs to, I mean, granted, he's played all of 1.8 minutes, it feels like, of the season until this last game. Once he settles in offensively, can he be that point guard that gives Deuce the opportunity to just play a 2, and then we can rotate in a Taz at a 3 guard spot, or, Matthews or Bridges or McNeil, rotate them in? Because what I've noticed, and this is again just me noticing, I feel like defensively Sean McNeil has struggled some, and in turn that's probably not helped his standing with the coaching staff. So that's forced them to try to figure out how can we get a better defensive group out there, and in turn that causes him to not have the ability to kind of heat up and get going. So I think the emergence of Kedrian Johnson is definitely a positive thing, maybe not for Jordan.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm with you guys in the sense that I like Jordan McCabe. I've always felt that he could be that guy, but he's had opportunities to be that guy and he's never seized them. So I don't know. We're at that point now where the guy's a junior, almost halfway through his junior season. Might be time to move on.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with Kedrian though, honestly, in the moment of that second half against Oklahoma State, I really felt like sincerely his effort and tenacity and quickness and ability to guard and to get in people's faces and harass the ball, their ones and twos on the perimeter did a lot to key that sequence and that run. There was a key stretch of about 5 Oklahoma State turnovers that cut the lead to around 6 or 8. And I felt like he had such a huge part of that. So I think a bonus for Kedrian to me, I mean, as a fan watching the game, is you look at his stat line. I think he ended with so in addition to what we're noting down on the defensive side of the ball, I think he finishes with 9 points, 5 rebounds. I think he had 3 assists. I mean, to me, I think I read, and I'll link to it in the show notes, but someone tweeted out earlier today that I think he had the best plus minus of anyone in the lineup from that game. That's saying a lot.
Yeah, I was impressed by him. I wasn't real high on him early in the year. The first time I saw him, he got a rebound and went down and shot about an air ball, missed the hoop by about 5 feet. And I was like, man, that's going to be a one-way ticket back to the bench with Hugs. And, I was super impressed by him this last game. And Guido, I had the exact same thought. I'm like, man, Jordan McCabe went from, 8th man to, 9th or 10th at this point. Which is sad because I'm a Jordan McCabe fan too. I've had 2 interactions with him where I've talked to him. Super personable, really nice guy. You want someone like that to be successful, but you got to perform when you're on the court, nice guy or not.
Kedrian Johnson kind of reminds me of maybe not offensively the same, but energy wise, he kind of reminds me of a Tariq Phillip a little bit. Okay. Kind of defensively, kind of in your grill, quick like Tariq is. I don't know. Do you think that's a decent comparison?
I think that's totally fair. I expect him to come in and, when he gets subbed into the game, the opposing team being, oh, great, now I got this guy who's going to be up all up on me. Not really worried about hitting threes, but his job is to come in, shut down the other point guard. And, we're going to see more minutes from him for sure.
Well, and Brent, I have to think as soon as Huggs sees that effort, sees the defense, sees him getting up in people's grill, locking people down, making them pass the ball, that's got to I have a feeling if you're Huggs, that's exactly what you're looking for. You've got his attention.
And didn't he take a charge?
Yeah, he took a key charge. Yeah. I think he took the charge that ended up being Cade Cunningham's 5th foul. So
yeah. So and then this team in the second half, and I know it doesn't show in the stats line, but Gabe Osaboyan again is guarding probably the, at least maybe not the best player in the Big 12, but at least the most highly touted player right now in the Big 12 with Cade Cunningham. I mean, you have a guy like, and Johnson and I watched Gabe play a couple of times last year, and Gabe's a great defender, but man, that's tough for him. That's a tough role to throw on to him, in that game. And I think that what we'll see with this team moving forward, or I hope that we see with this team moving forward, is that defense starts to become a little bit more of an important role. And we see those key players now with Kedrian Johnson, with Gabe Osaboyan, be able to start coming in and taking some of that. I will say, and I wanted to talk about it, this might have been, I've seen a lot of WVU basketball. Brent, all of us have watched a lot of WVU basketball. That was one of the better games I've seen in a long time last night. Down with 11 minutes left to go in the game, down by 19. That's the biggest comeback we've had in years.
Hey, it was fun to watch. Everyone else in my house was asleep at that point. Those 9 o'clock games are tough to stay up for, but man, I'm glad that I stayed up. And that was so exciting to just see us chip away. And the word that I used earlier, grit, man, we just showed a ton of grit by not folding. It's easy for a team to just fold. Hey, there's 10 minutes left. We're down 19. This game's over. And we did not do that. And Huggs is the kind of coach that won't allow that to happen. So, Yeah, like I said, the Oklahoma game, second half of the Oklahoma game, Oklahoma State game. I'm excited, going forward, even with the loss of Oscar.
Well, and don't you think, and I feel like this gets glossed over more because of Derek Culver and the way he plays, and you just get used to him doing these kind of things. He goes for 22 and 19 against Oklahoma State, which is crazy to me. I think John Antonik pointed out today that that's only happened like maybe 7 other times in the history of WVU basketball. That's kind of crazy. Or I may have that wrong. I'll link
I think
to
it was
in the
like
show notes.
7 times in the last since 1960 or something.
Is that what
it's
it
like
was?
a-
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a rare feat. But one of the things I loved, Brent, and I wanted to get your take on it. There was a period, there was a few minutes, probably somewhere between 6 minutes and like 3 minutes to go in the game. Cade Cunningham, and I think Mike Boynton was really asking him, to kind of take the ball, take it over, hit some shots. Derek Culver went right back at him. I mean, like, there was a baseline dunk. He shook the rim. Cade Cunningham came back down, made a jumper. Derek went back down, pulled up from like the elbow, made a jumper. I mean, like, DC went right back at him, and I loved that. I was yelling from the couch, like, stick it to this dude, man. Like, you could tell, Cade Cunningham is trying to come out. Hey, this is what we're gonna assert ourselves. We're gonna take over the game. Culver wasn't letting it happen. I kind of think put that to a stalemate, and then like helped everyone else continue to rally around it. He wasn't gonna let it be a one-man show for Oklahoma State. I personally loved that, and I think it gets lost in the shuffle of some of the other stuff. But I that stood out to me down the stretch.
Yeah, so Cunningham's a much more polished player than Culver, but Culver is a man. Cunningham is still I don't want to say a child, but he's
a young pup.
Yeah, he's 6'8", 220, and I mean the announcer said that 1,500 times during the game. But Culver is just a man. He's been a man since the second he stepped on campus. He's just big, he's strong, and he plays super physical. So, someone might be able to pull up and maybe get a bucket or two on him, but he is not afraid to go right back at him, body to body, make that contact and get the bucket as well. And yeah, I'm with Johnson. That was super fun to see that series where he was just, our go-to guy, and he delivered multiple times in a row.
So Hugs gets his
For me,
300th win.
I was gonna say, for me, the dunk out of the double team where he basically ripped the rim off the freaking glass.
Yes,
that was the turning point of the game. I think for me.
Yeah,
I agree.
Because we were still down at that point, but that was like, okay, Derek Culver's not taking any more crap.
Yeah,
he's
a
ready to
man.
play.
And the funny thing about Culver, he was in the doghouse big time when he came here, and now he's showing that he can get coached up. He's improved, and he's listening to coach and trying to get better, and that's one thing I'm not so sure Oscar was doing. That Oscar came in, I'm the best. I don't want to say that he thought he was the best, but we're seeing the difference between Culver being able to be coached up and maybe other players not.
Well, and I think if you're in a McDonald's All-American, you're going to come into the program with a chip on your shoulder, and I think Oscar did. And then I think he had that chip on his shoulder this year, and Derek's just been playing better than him all year, and I think that's probably was tough for him to swallow. So, and
I agree 100%.
And I look at this now, this team now, and I feel like it's going to change the narrative of this team a lot, especially the next 2 games, which are you're playing the number 2 and the number 4 teams in the nation back to back. And it starts to change.
It's kind of like don't pat yourself on the back. You've got Texas who just housed Kansas, and Baylor's number 2.
Baylor's number 2, and I think it puts it changes the narrative nationally with this team of being, this is the big man team. Look at all these big men, and it starts to talk about these little young bucks that are going to come out and make these shots, and you get the Kedrian Johnsons have a big game and the Jalen Bridges have a big game, and you don't know who might be out and have maybe Spencer Mackey comes off the bench and throws up 25. Who knows? But maybe not. But I mean, you don't know. I think that's the narrative that the team is changing, is that it's not just Oscar and Derek. It's and Deuce. It's going to be all of these names now. how are you guys feeling about looking down the barrel here, playing Texas on Saturday and then Baylor on Tuesday?
Well, I think for me, and then I'll shut up and because I'm interested really to get Brent's take too. But even, like I said, we're still kind of on the high of this recency bias of the Oklahoma State second half. But the whole game and sort of in the Oklahoma game too. And I think maybe that's why I got so excited about Kedrian Johnson, but I kept watching the game saying, man, where is the defense? You give first half against Oklahoma State, you give up 45 points. Brent, that's a lot of points in a half for us. And you give up, even though, we win because, hey, guess what? We scored 52 points in that second half. That's insane to me. We still gave up 39. That's a pretty big chunk. So to me, overall, you give up 84 points against Oklahoma State in that game, 75 against Oklahoma. That's a little bit, what I would call normal. But even so, I think if you ask Hugs right now, he doesn't feel like we're playing defense where it needs to be. And I think when you look ahead to teams that can score the ball, like Texas and Baylor, these next two games, it's not going to get any easier. And I'd love to think that we're going to continue to, spread the floor, make the passes like we're talking about, hit the shots. But if I had something that I wanted to just hit on right now that I was worried about, it would be what feels like defense. I don't know if it's effort or whatever you want to call it, but defense that doesn't feel like it's up to our standard of what we've come to expect.
I think it's so. My issue is, and this was my issue before, and I think if you remember in one of the previous shows, I was ticked off that we scored the ball so well against Richmond, because what it does is it sets up fans and social media for any kind of blip where we're not playing lights out basketball, that the sky is falling, this team is garbage. What I find frustrating for me, being that I've lived here in West Virginia now for 20 years. I've been a fan of the team for probably, I'm going to say 18 of those years. Got my master's degree from there. So I'm still a little bit, I'll probably always be seen as an outsider. But what's frustrating to me, I want to know
what you were doing those first 2 years.
I went to Wesleyan. I was still learning about the state. I wasn't sure what was going on yet. I didn't even know what a pepperoni roll was at that point. So I was still trying to figure things out. So my frustration is when it comes to the football team, and we've got a coach, and I'm not trying to disrespect the coaching staff or the program, but we're supposed to trust the climb when we have a 500 season. Yet we've got sixth all-time winningest coach. And if we struggle in the first half against a non-ranked team, the sky's falling. The guy can't coach. This is the worst program. I guess we're just a football school. I told you, Oscar, he drove Oscar out, and we're not that good. Coaching staff needs to change. This is a football school. We're not a basketball school. Why do we even like basketball? This is why we can't have nice things. So that's the message that comes out on social media. But we're supposed to trust the climb when we go 5-5 and we're rotating quarterbacks in a bowl game.
I don't even want to talk. I don't even want to do the next segment.
I love that. I actually love that.
I don't want to do the next segment.
On Neil Brown's hill, I'm just, come on, man. Just come on, troops. We're on up the hill. Hugs is over here on his hill. Everyone's at base camp.
His hill's like freaking way up here.
Yeah, they won't even start the climb. They're just like
and so I'm starting, instead of hashtag trust the climb, I'm hashtag hug it out.
Hug it out.
Hug it out.
Hugs it out. Hugs it out. You got to put an S in there. Hugs it out.
I like it.
Hey, anyone who says Huggins needs to go and he doesn't know how to coach, they obviously don't know basketball, or they're just, going to be unhappy with anyone. And for everyone who said, oh, Hugs ran him out, I sat 2 rows behind Duke last year against Virginia Tech down in Blacksburg. And I'll tell you what, Coach K coaches harder than anyone I've ever seen. He almost broke his clipboard a couple times, screaming on those guys. And my son was right next to me, and I was like, hey, listen, that's how you get talked to when you play big time basketball. I mean, Coach K was lighting into those McDonald's All-Americans. His bench is littered with them. He was screaming on all of them. I thought he was going to have a heart attack or stroke or something. But Hugs is not, yeah, he comes across as a grumpy coach, but there's more coaches like him than not like him. And Oscar's leaving. He's going down to, Larinaga coaches Miami. And I love Larinaga. I actually took one of my official visits to Bowling Green specifically because of the coaching staff. Jim Larinaga was the head coach 26 years ago. Super, super nice guy. I loved his whole staff. Will he coach like that? I don't know. He's a great recruiter, super nice guy. I don't know if that's his coaching style or not, but he has been successful at a bunch of smaller schools like Bowling Green, like George Mason. So it'll be interesting to see that dynamic of, how much does he coach Oscar up, or is he going to just kind of sit back and let Oscar do his thing and not be, not have all these high expectations and push Oscar to be the best he can be. But yeah, for all these clowns out there that are down on Hugs, they must have not been around years ago, because right now, if we don't make it to the Sweet 16, it's a disappointment.
Right.
When I played in 98, we made it to the Sweet 16 for the first time in literally like 35 years. So the fans quickly forget how good we have it now with Hugs.
Yeah, and I can't imagine we're not going to see Hugs' name on the ballot for the Hall of Fame, here in the next 3 weeks, whenever it comes out. I mean, people who, and I don't know, people loved him when he came back because we're a homer state and we want the home guy. They loved Rich Rod when he was there because he was the homer, and the same thing with Hugs. But I feel like with Hugs, for some reason, and I think it's also sometimes because Hugs's media personality is, he's not the most lovey-dovey coach. He doesn't really he doesn't give everybody
He doesn't
warm
play the game.
He doesn't give everybody warm fuzzies. Yeah, right. He doesn't play the game. But yeah, your guys are 100% right. Like, if anybody who's trying to say get rid of Hugs or get rid of this coaching staff is ridiculous. I mean, he's 300 wins. This is Oklahoma State was his 300th win while at WVU. He's gonna be in the Hall of Fame. He's gonna be one of the greatest coaches of if not the greatest coach in WVU history. It's crazy. We do get to see Texas come in with Shaka Smart's team. Texas 8-1
with hair now. Shaka has hair now.
Shaka has hair now, apparently. Texas is 8-1 with 2 wins in the Big 12 over Oklahoma State and Kansas right now, and they come in. They play Saturday at 1 p.m. That game is on ESPN, and check it out. One other non-West Virginia NCAA thing I want to talk about, guys, basketball thing, came out this week that the NCAA tournament has officially decided that they are playing all of March Madness in the state of Indiana. Pretty interesting sort of way they're going to take it. Sort of like a bubble. I won't say that Scoot can predict the future, but Scoot kind of predicted the future when he said they were going to, put these guys in a bubble, and it looks like they're going to do the tournament in the bubble this year.
He did, and I was hoping this meant that some of the games would be played at Hinkle Fieldhouse where they filmed Hoosiers. I wanted to see Hugs walking out on the court, measuring 10 feet up with the measuring tape and looking at his guys and saying, "See, Spencer Mackey, 10 foot, like don't get it all in your head. It's 10 feet. Let's go play some basketball." But I don't think
listen, Hugs channeled his Norman Dale this past week when he said he wanted to talk about the players he has on the team and not the ones that aren't.
That's right. He did do. You're exactly right.
Chitwood. He doesn't care about Chitwood.
Brett, as somebody who has played in the NCAA March Madness and gone to all of these, been able to travel and go and play one weekend in this site, one weekend at that site, how much do you think it changes the tournament this year, thinking that they're all going to be within 30 miles of each other? So
Indianapolis, I went there when we played in the Final Four in 2010, and it's a great location. I had such a fun weekend there. So a couple of things though. I'm wondering if they're gonna have that same type of schedule where, hey, you're playing one weekend, then you get a week off. I can imagine guys going stir crazy in a hotel room for a full week. So I'm wondering if they're going to try to compress that a little bit or what they're going to do. we were supposed to fly when we played. We played 2 games in Idaho. We played Temple and then Cincinnati. We were supposed to fly back, go to a couple days of class, then fly out to California. And coach said, forget that. We're going straight down to Anaheim. We're not going to be going back and forth all across the country. And some of us actually snuck out. Well, we didn't sneak out, but we went to Disneyland, which would be like the worst place you could imagine for probably COVID, standing all those lines. So I don't know how they're going to, force everyone to not, go out and do different things and just expect a 20-year-old to stay in a hotel the whole time. It'll certainly be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Well, and it's going to be interesting too, because you're used to these, like you said, being played in these big venues where you're in Madison Square Garden and you're in these huge events. I mean, so here are the locations. And Johnson, you're going to be excited when I say this. So they're playing at the Bankers Life Fieldhouse, which is the Indiana where the Pacers play, but they are playing at Hinkle Fieldhouse, home of the Butler. So they're playing there.
Sweet.
They're playing at the Farmers Coliseum. They're playing at Mackey Arena where Purdue plays. They're playing at Assembly Hall. So games will be in all these collegiate venues where you don't, you're used to playing in these bigger arenas. So it'll be interesting to see how that all susses out. And I'm with you, Brenna. It'll be interesting to see how they do with the schedule of it. It hasn't come out yet. They're still working on that, and they're working on integrating the women's at the same time as well. So I don't know how that'll all kind of jive in together, but also doing that in Indiana at the same time.
So I don't know as much about this as I probably should, but what was the reason for that? Was it just to get rid of the flights and the airports and, just try to minimize that type of contact, or what was the reason for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 100% that, just, minimizing the contact and the amount of places that, you've got players going from, playing in Buffalo, then playing in, Washington, D.C. or New York City or wherever, and traveling to all these places. I think it's just to kind of keep it all within, these 6 or 7 locations all within.
So I wonder, and we'll get to this once we get closer to it, but I wonder, so you find out Selection Sunday that you are, whatever seed team, do you just get on the bus right there and then, or the plane right there and then, and go so that you can kind of quarantine in hopes that you can I don't even know. I don't know what the turnaround time will be, because I imagine you're going to want to get in that bubble as soon as you possibly can to alleviate any other possible, interactions.
Well, and again, they
haven't
set a
schedule. And I also
yet.
wonder how much.
I wonder if they're going to have downtime between whenever the Big 12 championship is, and instead of it being the next weekend or whatever, 3 days later sometimes, I wonder if it'll be one of those situations where there's a week and a half or 2 weeks in between playing the tournament. And
I would venture to guess TBS, ESPN, all of those stations, channels, networks, so they're going to have probably the ultimate say as to who plays when they play.
Right.
Maybe even Las Vegas has some say.
Well, Scoot, this is I want to say March Madness is like $1 billion tournament. So it's one thing to have, a game canceled on December 28th, but it's a whole nother thing if you get down to the Final Four and one of those 4 teams all of a sudden has a couple of positive tests. Yeah. I mean, you are talking about a ton of money, and I know player safety, coach safety is the most important thing, but money is going to talk, and kids are going to be in their hotel rooms, when it comes to that kind of money being thrown out there. Just like the NBA, those guys were like, hey, if you want to make these millions of dollars, we need you doing the right thing. And almost all of them did.
And we've talked about it before. It's a $980 billion, scenario for the NCAA. It's most of the operating costs for NCAA for the years. I mean, I think Brett, you were on the show last time I said this. I'm not sure the NCAA can survive as an entity if they don't have March Madness for another year. So, I mean, I can't imagine they're not going to figure out a way to make it and do it and safe and make their money with the TV channels.
Yeah, it's not just the college basketball either. This tournament pays for a lot of other sports, a lot of other women's sports. So it's
D3,
critical.
D2. Yeah, right. So it'll be interesting. We'll follow it as the season goes on. Well, Brent, thanks for joining us again. We appreciate it. We'll have you back on here sooner than later, I hope. I hope you're willing to come back.
Anytime, guys. It's always a pleasure.
And thanks for all you listeners for hanging on. This is the super long show this week. I know it's crazy long, but we've got more to talk about. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about a WVU football bowl win. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Got Your Ears On. Cool.
Sweet.
That was an hour-long segment.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's fine though.
Sorry about that. I get on these tangents and
I
I
like
just
it.
keep talking.
No,
I'm
we had
sorry,
lots-
guys.
We knew that was going to be long because we had a lot of stuff to
Yeah.
talk.
Shit, yeah. So Oscar, like I know where
and 2 and 3 and 4 and
Oh no, I was just saying it's working right now, and it's you can see
name was called, and I mean, he very easily could have gone, 3 games into the season and said, "Screw this." I don't even. I think he had already graduated. To be honest with you, he probably could have just said, "I'm done. This is not worth my time." Because I mean, playing college sports is a grind. It's not like you just show up to practice after your classes are done. It's
Yeah.
6 a.m. or earlier.
No.
Your day starts with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, totally. I think here's the interesting thing for me and the whole part of it. And this might make you happy, Scooty, but Johnson, like, we had Jarrett Dagey, who we knew was a junior, who I think a lot of us, maybe happily or not happily, has accepted as the WVU quarterback for at least this season and most likely next season because of his, status in school. Now Jarrett Dagey gets benched, 2/3 of the way through this game after going 15 for 25, throwing 160 yards, having an interception, getting sacked twice, like
making the most horrific fumble I've ever seen.
That was a terrible fumble, like just a
in
horrific
a game when literally it was the worst case scenario for him to do that.
And if anybody should be happy Austin Kendall came in and won that game, it should be Jarrett Dagey, because that's all people would be talking about if Austin Kendall hadn't come back. That fumble, put us down by a touchdown at that point or whatever it was. I guess my question is for you guys. So now Austin Kendall is not coming back to the program, which I think we already knew that, but has apparently entered the transfer portal for.
Yeah, he's officially entered the transfer portal.
Third time, is that correct?
Will be a 35-year-old quarterback somewhere next year.
Probably at like Ball State or Bowling Green, but what does this do with Jarrett Dagey now? Jarrett Dagey gets benched in a bowl game. How do you come back in the spring game and in the fall practices and become the starting quarterback again?
Well, isn't it interesting, Scoot, that, because I already know what you're going to say, but just for a minute, humor me. Isn't it interesting that pre the Iowa State game, Guido and I, and most people, I think, had resigned ourselves to the fact that, yes, this isn't exciting. Yes, he's not setting the world on fire, but he's managing games. He's not turning the ball over. When
His
it's
stats
good,
weren't bad.
it's good enough. Yeah, and then you had the Iowa State debacle, and then, as much as I don't want to hammer on him, probably the worst half of Jarrett Dagey football I've ever seen in that bowl game, to the point where I have to think that I think in his worst potential outcome thoughts, Neil Brown never thought he'd have to be pulling Jarrett Dagey at halftime. But I think after 2 quarters of just what is he doing thinking, he had to get out of there and at least give someone else a chance to give us a chance to win. I guess my point is, isn't it interesting that we went from, well, it's not exciting, it's not the best, but we're resigned to the fact that that's our best option, to now I feel like Jarrett Dagey's almost played his way out of the start. Like, now to your point, Guido, I think you come back to camp in the spring and it feels wide open now. Like, it doesn't feel like he's hooked it to his hip or anything. Like, he's actually played it into now a wide open race if someone else can compete for it.
I personally have said this all season long. I think if we check Guido, can you go back and check the audio?
I'll go back and check the audio.
I've said for a long time, even in the first half of the season, where statistically I kept saying, yes, I get it. Statistically, he's not bad. His completion rate is good. He's got, I think he had a couple of 300-yard passing games. He didn't have very many interceptions. But to me, and again, I don't know that I would call myself a trained observer, but he was not passing the eye test. It felt like when we had 300-yard passing games by Jarrett Dagey, to me it felt like many of those passes were 15 yards or less as far as the ball traveling in the air, and a lot of it was Bryce Ford Wheaton or Winston Wright or
right. Absolutely.
Esdale doing a lot of the work to get some of those yards that obviously get credited to the quarterback.
And here's the thing I'll say, though, before we throw Jarrett Dagey or or even Austin Kendall for that fact, too far under the bus. We also have to talk about it's unacceptable, and something needs to happen if it's in the wide receivers position coach or if it's in the offensive coaching staff somewhere. The amount of dropped passes is ridiculous, and it's not a stat that is easy to find out there in the internet world. I'm sure it's out there, but I felt like we dropped 20 plus passes.
Yeah, it definitely reared its head again from I was hoping we were over that hump, but early in that game it felt like an epidemic again.
And so
I mean, some could argue as a wide receiver, you should be ready for the ball early because Jarrett's not going to throw it very far. And some could argue that, hey, I don't have to run as far. Let me take my, 5-yard route, take a hard right turn or a hard left turn and be ready to catch the ball.
Well, where I get on Scoot's bandwagon, and I hate to do it, where I agree with Scoot is that everybody talks about the drop passes and talks about how they're a problem, but how much of those drop passes are a quarterback problem and not a wide receiver problem? And so is this problem that has been there, and the difference is it's the weird thing about West Virginia football this year is it hasn't just been one wide receiver that's had drop passing issues. It's been the vast majority of them that have had problems with drop passes. So
you're saying maybe the routes are good.
Maybe the routes are good and the hands
the balls
good.
Are not.
The ball is not. Right.
Yeah.
I am going to be very curious as to what happens next year with the quarterback role. And I'm going to give you guys a throwback here. I think it is going to be reminiscent of 2005 WVU football season, where we started off. Who was the starting quarterback at the beginning of 2005?
Adam
Bednarik. And I think it was either the third or fourth. I think they played like Wofford or somebody weird in there. And that's, or I can't remember who it was. And that's when we saw Pat White. And then it was just Pat White till the end of time.
Here's what I don't know.
We beat Cincinnati in like the most boring score ever. Then we went into the Louisville game. Adam got hurt. And the rest is history.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like, and I don't know this, maybe you can tell me, Guido or Johnson. Garrett Green seems to not be super tall. Would that be a fair statement? I don't know if is he 6 foot or is he under 6 foot?
I think he is at or close. I think they might put him at 6 foot, but I think he's probably closer to that 5.
And then Goose is what, 6'2", 6'3", maybe?
Yeah, Goose is tall.
From what I've heard.
Yes.
A little bit taller. So for me, and I don't know why this matters to me. I guess it does a little bit. I'd like the quarterback to be probably more like Goose's height. Because I think Goose will end up being taller than Daggy and Garrett Green. But the quarterback, one, needs to be able to throw the ball some distance for me. And two, understand that he has 2 legs and they work. Right. And like Letty Brown is a miracle worker.
Yeah.
For the fact that nobody in America, I don't know that there's anybody, maybe worldwide, that at any point ever thought that play action pass or that draw RPO. Play or that RPO was going to go with Jarrett Daggy anywhere
other than Letty, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. I've seen gargoyles move more than Jarrett Daggy did. So, like, it's amazing to me, and it's, I guess, a testament to the offensive line that they were able to hold blocks. There's a lot of things where I'm sure teams keyed in. Listen, Daggy never runs the ball. He may show this. It's a run. He may show that. It's a run. So it makes it tough.
Well, I think for this game, though, I'm not going to lie. So after that disastrous fumble we talked about that eventually led to Daggy being yanked, you guys remember Army comes out to start the second half. They go up 21-10. Guido, I thought this game was over. So the fact that, because of the style of play that Army plays, it's, they're a tough watch, right? I mean, that's a boring brand of football. It's chewing up clock. You feel like, it starts to put so much pressure on every possession because you're just simply not sure you're going to get the ball back. For me, as much as, you know, whatever you think about Austin Kendall, I thought it was pretty miraculous that he comes in, he sparks 2 touchdowns. You know, we get the 2-point conversion and go up by a field goal in a half that felt, you know, that 11-point lead that Army had almost felt insurmountable at the time. So,
Yeah.
you know, I thought good for him. Not only has he stuck around, but he comes in and he kind of answers the call when he's asked. You know, there was a really awesome onside kick that I thought, you know, was a cool twist, caught them by surprise. Guido, I thought someone made a gif of Nick Troy Fortune jumping up and down with his arms in the air, that like he was just like a kid on Christmas morning jumping up and down, waving his arms in the air after they thought they got that recovery. That was a cool turn of events. It certainly led to a pretty awesome second half for that game.
Well, this is one thing I'm going to say, and I know we talk a lot about trusting to climb, and Scoot talks about being at base camp and all that. I'll tell you one thing about a Neil Brown program that I think that I don't know if we definitely haven't seen over the last 10 years in the program, which is the fact that even when we were down, and Austin Kendall's coming in the game, some of those players, some of those guys we've talked to, you know, Rucker, who's been on our show, Evan Matthias, who's the backup to the backup punter or whatever. No, I shouldn't say. He's the backup punter, I think. You know, those guys on the sidelines pumping up the team, the juice squad as they call them.
Juice squad, yeah.
And you see those guys, you see that energy and that, you know, even when they were down, those guys, what Neil Brown has those non-role players do and make, you know, those guys who maybe only run a special teams play every now and then out there and doing those kind of things to pump up the players on the field is amazing. And that's where I trust the climb, Scoot, is I still believe in this program. Neil Brown is now what? He's 11-11, I think, total while he's at West Virginia. You know, he's won 4 bowl games, just only one for us now. He's undefeated in bowl games, 4-0. I like the guy. I like the team. I like the program. I like the direction. I hope that, you know, I still believe that this next year, 2021 football is truly his year one, because we're starting to get your own recruits. You don't have COVID. Hopefully you have less COVID crazy you have to deal with canceled games and practice schedules and all of that. And so you start to see this team build. And, you know, I mean, and we saw it already with his name being, you know, tossed around for the Auburn head coaching position, which I didn't think was going to come to fruition, but his name got thrown out there. And he said, in another coaching position too, and he said last week or the other week, I'm happy here. I'm happy. My family's happy here. I'm not going anywhere. So I will
start trusting the climb when maybe I see something. To me, I'm not a believer in what I was seeing offensively. I mean, it was too predictable, and it makes it easy to defend. And I think, you know, we lacked a lot of big play opportunities. And I don't know. I just want to see substantial growth, I guess. Minimal growth doesn't excite me, and it doesn't keep me.
I guess. And here's my problem, Scoot. And like, this is where I'm just. I don't. This is our first bowl we've played. This is our first bowl win in what, since 2016 Citrus Bowl 2016.
Citrus Bowl, yeah.
Now, yes, but let's talk by halftime. I would venture to guess 90% of West Virginia fans were ready to start like loading the U-Haul for Neil Brown to send him somewhere.
Well, and this
because
is
people were thinking this is maybe the worst loss we could have possibly had.
I think those last show we said, and you said actually, you know, we were talking about what does a loss mean in this game? What does a win mean in this game? And I think at halftime, Neil Brown was like, Look, Austin Kendall may mean nothing for the development of the climb, but we got to win this game because if we don't, then everyone is heading back to base camp. And so I think, to me, he did what he had. And Guido,
I'll give him all the credit.
And I think where Guido is going is like, this is a guy that knows how to win a bowl game. He kind of put that stuff to the side and said, look, right now we got to go out and win this bowl game. We need to take some momentum into the off season. We need to build on something, and it cannot be a loss to Army in the Liberty.
Well, and I'll give him all the credit in the world that he had enough chutzpah to make a change when a change needed to be made. Had he trotted out the same old in the second half, I think like my base camp becomes like a city. Like I'm hanging out with I'm the mayor of the base camp.
Yes, right.
You know, so I think that's a big change. Now, there's still got to be more changes though. Just because we won one game and it's against a team that, you know, if you want to be considered the upper echelon of college football, you shouldn't be struggling against an Army. You should
and I agree, but I think to your point though, now you've at least given yourself some breathing room to now make changes, right? So I guess that's what I was thinking after that game went. So when that game went zeros, it was like, okay, like phew, we, sigh of relief. We don't got to go into the off season with this cloud over us.
Right now, okay, we've got some offensive line coming in. We've talked about that in the last couple of episodes. So you would think with a stronger offensive line, we should have a continued strong running game with Letty, with Sparrow, with whoever's next in line after Letty.
Yeah.
Hopefully for our sake, Mark Rucker. And then beyond that,
and you figure out this quarterback situation.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, Scoot, I'm with you on the quarterback thing. I don't think any of us are in love with the idea of Jared Dagey. And I think that what we have to remember is that all the other pieces are falling into place there. The defense looks good. Is going to look good next year. And you got to remember, there's going to be whatever next year's Tony Fields is going to come into the program. You're going to get those grad transfers that are going to make a difference too. We've seen them now 3 years in a row. I think that, we do need to figure out this quarterback position, and it needs to be.
So we go into spring.
Yeah.
And we go into spring practice, and let's say Neil Brown comes out and says, Jared Dagey's our quarterback. He's the guy that we're going to follow. I think to go through spring practice.
I think the difference is this year more than last year. I think the difference is Jared Dagey's leash is going to be a lot shorter than it was this year.
And you can't hardly be surprised if you come out in the spring and that's the answer, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't be shocking.
And that's what I'm saying.
He's going to have he's going to have the most experience. He's going to have the most game time, and his two main competitors are going to be guys largely that haven't played at all. So I don't, prepare to not be shocked if that's the scenario.
I'm just not going to be shocked. I'm just not going to be shocked if we have a scenario where 3 games into the season, maybe then you see Dagey get benched if it's not going well, and then you see Garrett Green. I think that's what the thought process I have. I think Dagey probably starts as the starting unless he leaves the program. He starts as the starting quarterback at the beginning of the next season. I just think if he struggles those first 3 or 4 games, especially getting in the conference play, I think it's going to be a short leash on him.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, for me in the spring, this is what I would like to see. I would like to see, at the very least, Neil Brown come out and say, you know what, we've got an open competition for quarterback. We want to put the best person behind center that we can. I want Garrett Green to get some reps with the first team guys.
Well, and I think you will see that. I mean, I think it's even after this bowl game, it's going to be natural,
and I'd rather, not that I want to be mediocre, I don't, but I'd rather be, I feel I could justify being mediocre with a freshman quarterback or a young quarterback that's going to be leading our program, as opposed to, I guess I don't want to say it cheapens it, but it feels cheaper with a transfer. It feels like we didn't groom the guy. It feels like we didn't build him. And I know we had Will Grier and people were confident in Will Grier, but I guess maybe there's a difference in that Jared Dagey is not Will Grier, and Will Grier got off to a really good start in college football and kind of came in with a little bit of a pedigree. And when he got the opportunity to play at WVU, it felt comfortable with Will Grier as quarterback. I don't know that it feels comfortable with Jarrett Doege.
I just expect him to put what he feels like is the best chance of winning at the position on the field. And I'm not going to be shocked if that's still Jarrett Doege, because I think it's unfair to the other two guys we're talking about to just act like they're going to step on the field, everything's going to click, and they're going to be okay. I mean, that would be awesome, but I think it's disingenuous to just think that's miraculously going to happen.
Well,
And we've got to beat the Texas Techs. We can't keep laying eggs to those types of teams.
Well, and the interesting thing will be that, we start off in College Park against, a Maryland team that has struggled over the past couple of years with Mike Loxley, but, is building a program there. So it'll be interesting that, he's going to come out and he's going to play a team that's better than the Army team that he just got benched playing. So, but let's go back to the bowl game just for a minute and just, give props where props are due. Letty Brown, tough game, didn't get that many yards, 65 yards net after you count losses and everything in there. But got over 1,000 yards this year. So that's a definite plus for, the running game. So good for him. You saw TJ Simmons finish strong, 2 touchdowns with a nice, catch for that lead getting touchdown right there at the end of the game. So good for him. And then on the defensive side, it was an all North Central West Virginia kind of game with, as we said earlier, Darius and Dante having great games. I mean, Dante was in on 4 tackles, Darius in on 3. Dante Bonamico was out there playing his heart out, another North Central West Virginia guy with 10 tackles. And Dylan Tonkery, who stepped into a role that he used to play, coming back in with Tony Fields being out, and just having a great game with 11 tackles.
Yeah, he had a great game, and some of those tackles were just really key tackles in situations we had to have. So, yeah, they played terrific.
Now, let me ask you guys a question. This is totally we did not plan for this, which is how I like to do things. So let's say WVU were to hand out the musket stickers on the helmet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh, I loved those.
I missed
Which offensive player do you think would have a helmet covered in the most musket stickers?
Based on the season or based on the bowl
Based
game?
on the season.
Based on that. Well, I think Letty Brown. I think I have to go with Letty Brown of all of them. And that's coming off of the fact that, not only did he have a great season running, but he had a great season running in front of a young offensive line after a terrible season of numbers last year. So I'm definitely in the Letty Brown side of things.
Yeah,
Johnson, how about you?
I'd go. I mean, Letty is who comes to mind as well, just because I think he had a great season individually, but I think as a team, that unit, the offensive line, I mean, I think Neil Brown will be the first to point to when he's talking about, what strides, what improvements. He'll point to statistics running the ball last year versus this year. So, yeah, that's where my mind goes is Letty.
It's good going to say
so
Jared Dayton.
Offensively, well, for me, yeah, I think Letty would have a lot of stickers. I do think that. I think maybe a close second could be a guy like it's crazy to say this as a freshman, could be a guy like Zach Frazier, who was able to play a bunch of different spots on the offensive line, started most of the time. Sometimes he was at center, sometimes he was at a guard, sometimes I think he even played tackle some. So I think he had a really good season. Offensively also, I guess for me, maybe you wouldn't have a ton of stickers, but would have been a guy that would have more stickers than you would have thought of. Might be like a guy like Mike O'Laughlin, the tight end, who if we went years, like Anthony Becht was probably the last time we even realized we had that position. And now all of a sudden we're starting to throw to a tight end again. So I think he would be a guy that would kind of catch me off guard. How about defensively, Guido?
I think defensively, I mean, you definitely would want to think one of the Stills brothers, being leaders and being out there. But I'll say Josh Chandler Semedo had a pretty awesome season for somebody that I don't know if we all expected him to have a great season. So I mean, again, also finishing strong with 10 tackles or whatever, 10 solo tackles at the bowl game. Johnson?
Yeah, I know Scoot wants me to say Jarrett Bartlett. And I am a Jarrett Bartlett fan, but I think
Much like the announcer from the second game of the season who
yes,
watched some sort of scout tape
made a big impression with that
from the
guy.
blue gold game or something. I'm not sure where he saw the highlight film, but
I think for me, even though he's not with us in the bowl game, I think Tony Fields would have had a helmet covered in musket stickers, because you can't discount someone who's leading pretty much every game in tackles. The games where which game, Guido, did he unfortunately got disqualified for the targeting? We talked about how big of an impact that was for that portion of a game. So I think that's who, in addition to the obvious Darius and even Dante on that defensive line, I think my mind goes to Tony Fields.
I'm going to throw out another name on defense. See, the defense, I think for me, it's easier to find the bright spots, because I really don't.
You could name anyone.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's so hard because they all should
name
have
so many people.
Like Tyke Smith.
Yeah,
there were times throughout the season where people nationally were saying that Tyke Smith might be the best defender,
and he might
in the whole Big 12.
Yeah.
Right.
But somehow he doesn't make all conference.
Right.
Any team all conference, but he's like a national, AP. Well, I don't know if he was second I think he was second team AP All American or something. But he doesn't make all conference. So Tyke Smith would have a lot of muskets. Prince Hakeem Messidor, as a freshman defensive lineman, also probably would have a ton of muskets on his helmet. So I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go. Nick Troy Fortune, they all had really good season.
And a lot of them are coming back. I mean, we've got a lot of those names are coming back next year, which is exciting. You got a guy like Akeem Messidor, who is a freshman. I mean, he's a true freshman out there playing. So it'll be exciting to have him come back. But it was nice I feel like, Scoot, and we said this, we said that it was important to win that bowl game, and Johnson's right. Coach Brown knows how to he was going to coach to a win, and he coached to win that bowl game. And here's an odd stat for you. Coach Brown has had an onside kick in 3 of his 4 bowl game wins that he's gotten back.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So West Virginia beats Army 24-21 in the Liberty Bowl down in Memphis. A couple other, sort of end-of-year football house cleaning things that we need to talk about. Darius Stills, congratulations to him. First team AP All-American. It's the first one we've had since. Can you guys guess? 2012.
Darryl Talley.
Tavon Austin in 2012 was a first team AP All-American. Darryl Talley. It's like what, 90, 80 what?
Throwing out a name.
Congratulations, Zach Frazier also was a freshman All-American. Letty Brown with over 1,000 yards this season. First player to do that since the 2017 season. So all of those good things to talk about. And then some rumors that are kind of floating out there. So we've talked about one player coming back to West Virginia from home. Another one that's kind of floating out there, Darnell Wright. Scoot, you mentioned it, I think, last week on the show. Starting to hear some rumors he might be coming back to Morgantown.
That would be a big coup, because I believe he was a 5-star recruit out of Huntington High. And like I said, we talked about this earlier. You do not want to mess with anybody from Spring Valley or Huntington during the last 5 years, or also in that area, mid-90s, you didn't want to mess with anyone from Milton.
Yeah.
Am I right?
So I hear, yes.
So Johnson,
you're right.
I mean, guys from Milton were tough. We're nasty.
I mean, guys from
when the Greyhounds got off the bus,
we were
you
tough
needed
in
to
Fairmont.
take notice.
That's right.
We were tough in Fairmont too.
Well, maybe not in the mid-90s. Recently, yes, but maybe not. Maybe not when you were there.
No, maybe not. Interesting Big 12 news. So probably to no shock to anybody, Texas fires Tom Herman after, I guess, not making them national champions because that's what they want.
Doing that poor dance that he did. That one weird, like,
yeah.
What was it? It was some sort of weird. Was it a sad cow hands dance or something?
Yeah.
He was doing some sort of weird,
the weird
like
cow hands dance or whatever.
cow hands. Yeah.
Well, and we say to no one's surprise, but I think this was what, a week, 2 weeks or something after they said Tom Herman's our guy moving forward.
Right.
And we're not making a coaching change. Oh, by the way, he's fired. Like that seemed weird to me. And I think, now I think that what we're hearing, what is Steve Sarkisian from Alabama, I guess, is the leading candidate for
No,
that.
he is.
I think he is the guy.
Yeah,
Has he officially been named? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the Nick Saban coaching tree falls into the Big 12 now, as Steve Sarkisian is now the next head coach of the Longhorns. So, I mean, it doesn't make me afraid of him next year, but we'll see how. Again, it's another one of those weird things with like guys like the Lane Kiffins of the world who fall off of these coaching trees from these amazing coaches that win championships, and will they succeed or do they just bounce around for a couple of seasons? So,
now speaking of coaching changes, Guido,
yeah,
there was another big coaching change, pretty close to home,
definitely
close to that Milton location there at the Big Green, Marshall, and
now, did Doc Holliday get fired, or was that a resignation?
They just did not extend his contract.
Did not extend the
so
contract.
his contract technically comes up, I think, at the end of the fiscal year, which is June. So
okay.
by not renewing his contract, they're saying, "Hey, you won't be back next season," which I think is odd, Scoot, because when I heard this, you can't help but acknowledge that this comes like 3 weeks after Doc was named Coach of the Year for Conference USA. Now, I know they had like an implosion last 3 games of the year, but this just feels so weird to me.
It's very strange. I can't help but think it might have something to do with his mask on mask.
Maybe it's the mask situation.
No strings attached.
The no strings attached mask on mask.
And then,
and I think here's a guy, Guido, just really fast back to Scoot's point. I mean, Doc, obviously we know Doc was in Morgantown for so many years, but he's from Hurricane. You have to say it like Hurricane or people get mad at you. He knows the area. Scoot, I think he was the 8th highest paid coach in Conference USA. I mean, really?
He wasn't really raking it in, if you're
no. So I guess when I heard this, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to what goes on at Marshall, but when I heard this, my first thought was, and I'm sure there's reasons that people are like, yes, let's move on. Let's go with somebody new, but I'm not sure who you're going to get to want to be there as much as he did, be okay not making a whole lot of money and still keep the team relevant and winning and in the conversation for things. So, the whole thing to me just felt really weird when I read that.
Well, the names that are being floated are interesting.
The names that are coming out are super interesting. I mean, you've gotten some of the crazy ones that I don't even know if are real. Like you've heard Rich Rod's name get thrown out there. But Byron Leftwich, who is currently the offensive coordinator with Tampa Bay, is that correct?
Yes.
And so his name's been tossed out there a little bit. Who else has been out there?
Gerard Parker.
Gerard Parker.
Or Jared. But we like to call him Gerard.
We call him Gerard, but Jared Parker.
Jared Parker.
And we've also seen Tony Gibson's name pushed out there too. I think Tony Gibson's right. He's from Logan. He certainly knows the area. He's a West Virginia guy. He's still the defensive coordinator at North Carolina State, but they expect to have conversations with him too. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I just think that whenever I see stuff like this, I tend to be on the side of like, be careful what you wish for type of stuff, know? So,
whenever I start, I feel like this is always a media thing where they're just going to pull out the most names of guys that are either connected to the state or to the program first. And then it's always from somewhere else that it gets pulled from. So
Jared Parker was an interesting one though, because I don't think that was on anybody's, at least not my radar. I wasn't even thinking, I wonder where Jared Parker was born.
I feel like Scoot, you're the one who started that rumor on Twitter.
I mean, I did not start it.
Scoot's greasing up the rail in Morgantown right now. So.
I might help push it, but I did not start it.
It'll be interesting. So good luck to all of those Herd fans down there. With
I see where you're going with this, Scoot. You wanna You want a coup. You secretly want a coup of Jared Parker to Huntington with a Jarrett Dagey follows him in the transfer
Maybe.
portal. Is
Well,
that
there
Yeah.
what
you
you're
go.
saying?
I'm just saying. I mean, I hate that for Grant Wells, but maybe that's something in the offering.
Would you take Grant Wells as your quarterback in Morgantown?
Yes,
Yes, you would. So
I would.
maybe it's a trade. Maybe we do a little trade right there. Can you
We
do
could
that?
trade.
We're
That would be
close.
something.
NCAA is close to allowing that. I think trades. So I think it might happen here in the, one of the next couple of years. So, well, everybody.
I'm sorry, Guido, one quick thing. And I just thought of this when we were talking about potential coaches. One thing that maybe, and going back to WVU, and we talked about how well the defense did, and we went through this whole rigmarole in the beginning of the season, the preseason, with Vic Koenig leaving and being kind of asked to leave and that falling out there. The defense did so well, and I know we talked a little bit about the effect that Jamal Adai and Jordan Leslie had on the defense, kind of being co-coordinators. But and I don't know anything, obviously, but I'm wondering,
As long as you
if
can admit that, that's all that matters.
if Jeff Castile's impact in the meeting rooms and on the sidelines and at the on the practice field, having been a former defensive coordinator at several Power 5 conference schools, I can't help but think that didn't have some sort of positive impact on the defense.
Yeah, it may have. I mean, I think that the defense was going to be good going into this year, no matter what. And I mean, everybody was like, "Oh, Vic Koenig." Remember we talked about it. It was, "Oh, Vic Koenig's gone. The defense is going to stink now."
Good
Well,
luck. Yeah, good luck.
good
They
luck.
won't stop
Good luck.
a nosebleed.
Yeah, right. And look what happened to all those people. They're eating their words now. So, yeah, it was interesting. Well, listen, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. We know this was a long show, but there was a lot to unwrap. First of the year, lots of football. It'll all go back to normal starting next week. We're going to bring back Bluff the Fluffs. Maybe Scoot will pull something off the internet. Maybe we'll let him, go play.
Oh, it's a new season.
It's all going to refresh next week. Yeah, new season of Bluff the Fluffs. So we're going to see how that might suss out. Maybe maybe a couple of changes. There might be a couple of changes to the new season. Give Scoot a little bit better of a chance. Like we'll do guess the food or something.
So the script is going to be different, is what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
Okay.
Nobody knows, Scoot. Nobody knows. So, everybody, thanks for listening. We appreciate you sticking with us for such a long time. It's probably the longest podcast episode in our history. So, you got that going for us, which is nice. Everybody, have a great week. Don't forget, you can find us on social media. Look for us on Instagram and Twitter at Got Your Ears On. You can also find us on the internet. Check our website out, gotyourearson.com. Get that merch. Get that Pullover Guy shirt. They're flying like hotcakes off the presses, so you better order them before they're all gone. Pullover Guy. A little support for Huggins there. We'll give $1. We'll give $1 of every shirt to we don't make any money on those shirts, so I guess we'd be giving away $1. We'll give $1 of every of those shirts to his Fish Fry Foundation there. So for the cancer research center that he does there. So definitely check that out. Go to gotyourearson.com, find our merch section. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks to Brent Solheim for joining us. You've been listening to Got Your Ears On.
You can cut that Jeff Castile thing out. I
actually liked it.
Second.
I wish you had said it earlier.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking at the time.
Or ever. I'm just kidding. Just joking.
You guys really yucked it up when I said I don't really know anything.
I don't really know anything.